Ever felt the urge to shop when you're down? You're not alone. Emotional spending is more than a coping mechanism. It's a reflection of deeper emotional states, sadness, stress, even boredom. But beware, this can escalate into compulsive buying, a psychological disorder that wreaks havoc on your finances and relationships. So how do we navigate this emotional maze? First, know thyself. Identify the emotional triggers before they lead you to the checkout counter. Replace the shopping cart with healthier coping mechanisms, perhaps a jog around the block or a chat with a friend. Budget for your emotional spending. Yes, allocate a feel-good fund, but keep it in check. Regularly review your finances. Awareness is the first step to control. And here's the twist. Find joy in saving. Imagine the rush of finding your savings grow. In the end, it's not just about money. It's about understanding yourself. Master your emotions, and you master your wealth. Judith, can you explain the neuroscience behind emotional triggers that lead to spending?
Yeah, that really is very much, we have different pleasure centers in our brain that are fueled by neurotransmitters. So what goes on with spending is that oftentimes when we do have emotions, we're sad, we're angry, we're afraid, even when we're joyous, we want to feel better. And we don't want to feel that uncomfortable feeling. And shopping, buying something oftentimes gives us this dopamine burst in one of the pleasure centers that we get from buying something new or shiny or something cool that covers up our upset for a little bit of time. But when we really understand how the brain works, that pleasure center that gets that burst of that dopamine, that little turn on, that's a kind of a nice feeling, but it's a very short-lived fuel. It only lasts for a little bit of time. And in that pleasure center, there's no satiation. We can never get satisfied. So for a moment, for a little bit, we'll feel a little better, but we don't get satisfied. It doesn't deal with the feeling that we're really having underneath. And then we want another dopamine burst. There is another pleasure center in our brains that the neuroscientists call the satisfaction center or the liking center. I call it the yearning center. That's really does have satisfaction. When we really focus on the things that really meet our deeper needs, that center gets activated. It's fueled by the opioids that gives us that sense of satisfaction, that that satisfied feeling, that feeling being sated, that doesn't come just from spending money and buying something new, shiny, cool, whatever, but it comes from really meeting our deeper needs. And to understand how the brain works and how those pleasure centers work and what really brings us satisfactions is one of the ways that we can actually be more aware of how to have more satisfaction and use money for the right things.
George, you were a financial advisor for many years before really pioneering the area of life planning. You mentioned to me that emotional triggers aren't really a focus in life planning. Can you give us some context? What are the things that you feel are really important to look at?
Well, the first book I wrote on life planning was called The 7 Stages of Money Maturity, and there was a lot in there about emotional triggers. But what I found was that the advisors who studied that work and were attempting to do a psychology of money weren't really they weren't trained in that. And moreover, they were getting lost and their clients were getting lost as well. And what I'd done for years was, it's important to understand those triggers. But the most important thing is what I think Judith was talking about at the end there, which is what makes you profoundly excited about your life. What is it that, you talk about knowing who you are. I think knowing who you are is much more about knowing that side of things than knowing the triggers. And if you know that side of things, if you are inspired to be the person you're meant to be, to accomplish the things you're meant to accomplish, those triggers fall away very quickly. And the life planning movement has trained thousands of advisors all over the world to focus largely on that aspirational element. It's not that we ignore the emotional struggles, because you have to be a great listener to be a great advisor, and that means you also have to empathize tremendously. But I think the key thing is knowing yourself in terms of the extraordinary person that you are rather than the triggers.
Well, I'd like to add something, if I can, Andy, to that, because I do agree with you, George. It is really getting a sense of that deeper meaning, the deeper, I call them yearnings, those deep yearnings we all have in our heart. However, the triggers are important because the triggers have clues to what it is that we really care about more deeply inside. We get confused about it. So let's say we want to buy something, we want to buy a designer outfit or something or whatever. So we want that. But really, we're much more deeply hungry to have more self-respect, to have people see us, that yearning we all have to be known, to be seen, to be valued. And we can translate, what's my trigger? What am I feeling? What's that trigger? What do I think buying this thing will do for me? And then really doing what it is, something that actually meets that deeper yearning. And you're right. What happens is that those habits tend to fall away. My first book was on this topic. I coined the term soft addictions. All those seemingly harmless habits we have, like over shopping, overspending, over social media, over anything. And really what I found was when we can understand what we hope they'll do for us and understand the feelings that trigger that, we can actually see what is it that I was hoping that would do for me. What is that deeper need that I have, that deeper yearning? Then we can use activities to actually meet that. And when we do that, other soft addictions aren't so attractive anymore. You don't need them in the same way. You don't have to white knuckle your way through it. They actually start to diminish because we're focusing on the things that really satisfy us.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You're talking about the the contrast, the kind of the paradox that what you want and then you go do something else.
Yeah.
What we found is that if we really inspire our clients to be that person that they want to be, and if we're great listeners, which is what a life planner is trained to be,
Yeah.
we hear all of that really pretty much in the first meeting, and certainly by the second meeting, it's pretty clear. And then we inspire the person to have that self-worth as part of their aim, part of their financial aim, really. It all has to do with money.
I'm getting the sense that the life plan is this overarching idea that really helps people to set and clarify their long-term goals. What is it that you want out of your life ultimately? And what is fulfilling to you? Versus, I think the emotional triggers, maybe it's more short-term. It's like, why do I want to go to the mall and buy something right now? I think that you need to address both of those, the long-term and the short-term, and hopefully figure out how they can live congruently and in alignment so that you can reach your long-term goals.
Agree with that one also, Andy. I have 8 key skills in this overcoming these soft addictions. And the first one I call is making what I call the one decision, making a bigger decision about the quality of your life. What do you really want to be orienting toward? Maybe it's more being someone of service, or being more oriented to the adventure of life, or to more truth and genuineness, authenticity. What are those values that you have? Decide that, and then try to make your smaller decisions according to that, rather than just trying to manage your mood in the moment by spending, which helps. It's simple, but not all that easy to implement. But with coaching and support, it's really a powerful way to live your life.
Thank you for that step. Let's go to segment 2.